This week's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is brought to you by the People's Company. That's right, they are back as a sponsor because so often I hear from farmers throughout Iowa and throughout the Midwest who are listening to the podcast while they are planting, while they are harvesting. They're in their tractors, they're in their combines, which makes the People's Company a perfect partner for the Moonlight Graham Show here. As you guys probably well know, the People's Company is based in West Des Moines, Iowa, but they've really grown to be one of the nation's leading providers in land brokerage, land management, land appraisal, and investment services. These guys, and I know Andrew Zelmer and Matt Adams over there at the People's Company, these guys live and breathe farmland, farm management, and they know that industry better than anybody. So if you're looking to buy a farm, sell a farm, having an auction coming up, call the People's Company. They are the best in the business. Check them out at peoplescompany.com.
This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. Once again, I am your host, Tim Flattery, and our Moonlighter for this week is one of the greatest basketball players in the University of Northern Iowa's history, and his name is Seth Tuttle. Seth Tuttle went to West Fork High School from Iowa, won a state championship in 2011, went on to the University of Northern Iowa where he started 136 games as a UNI Panther. That's right. He started every game of his Panther career, 136 of them, scored 1,747 points during his All-American career, where he was part of some of the best teams in UNI basketball history. After his career at UNI, Seth went on to play professionally overseas for 3 years, and he is now back on the bench as an assistant coach for the UNI Panthers, helping AJ Green and the boys get better each and every day. And he was a fun interview and a fun Panther to get on the podcast. And I think you guys are really going to like this one. So without further ado, here is Seth Tuttle. And if you like what we're doing here on the Moonlight Graham Show, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. Subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show, and you know the drill. Leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow the podcast on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. And enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter Seth Tuttle. But before we get to our interview, I know it's a tough time right now and a lot of people are out of work. So I wanted to talk about a new sponsor we have on the show, buildiowa.org, because the construction industry, especially throughout the Midwest, is still up and running and hiring. And so I was just on this website, buildiowa.org, and what really stood out to me was how much the professional men and women in this industry make. Did you know that professional estimators on average make between $62,000 and $80,000 a year? How about crane operators? What a cool job that is. They make between $60,000 and $70,000 a year on average. The other great part about buildiowa.org is how they spell out exactly how you can get started in the 27 different careers they have listed on the website. They have active resources to companies that are training and hiring. That's right, hiring right now. We know some of you Moonlighters are looking for a career change, or perhaps you've been impacted by this pandemic. If that's you, head on over to buildiowa.org and check out the incredible careers available right now in the construction industry. There's also a link to a job board that lists active jobs that are open right now. The good people at Build Iowa are here to help, and they want to make you aware that there are rewarding career options available for you. And for those of you on social media, check them out. You can find them Build Iowa on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. That's right, buildiowa.org. Let's just get started here. The first thing when I think of Seth Tuttle, the first thing that pops into my mind is the state championship, the state basketball tournament in 2011. What do you remember about the first round game against Fort Dodge St. Edmund, Seth?
What I remember is that we got lucky. That's what I remember. We got lucky. A great game, back and forth. They had three brothers on the team that were all really good, and they had Neil Clark, a point guard who could really score it. They had, I think it was Neil Clark.
Nick Clark.
Nick Clark, there we go. Nick Clark. Yeah, man, it's been a while apparently. I didn't think I'd ever forget that name, but apparently I've had other players pop in. No, yeah, Nick Clark could really score, and then they had three brothers, and they were a good team. The game went back and forth for a while. In the second half, late in the game, we had like a 1-point lead or something like that, and they had a play and they dropped it off to a kid, and he missed an absolute wide open bunny. Just absolutely alligator armed it and left it short on a point blank layup, and I grabbed the rebound and went down and made the free throws, and we ended up winning that game. So when I think about that game, I think about how lucky we were, and at the same time, how fun that game was, because it was back and forth pretty much the entire game.
Yeah, that was a really good basketball game. You had a sophomore that played really well that game. I remember. So, of course, I went to Fort Dodge St. Emmet High School. The three brothers that you're talking about, one of which is my brother, and then two of which are cousins. So they all have the same name, but they're not all brothers. And one of which, my cousin Anthony, was the guy who gator armed the layup, and that's one thing we don't talk about at family Christmases anymore.
Yeah, I could imagine that I bet that was a topic. Trying to avoid that topic for quite a while. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I didn't know that I figured they were just all brothers. Obviously, at that point, you don't do too much digging in. We knew they were somehow related.
Right.
But that's a great story, and it's sorry to bring that up to you or for you.
Well, I brought it up because I always wonder, when you're on the losing side of something like that, obviously it's this indelible memory, right? My stomach just sank. I'm still not really over it. I didn't even play in the game, and I'm not over it.
Yeah.
But you guys go on to win the state tournament. Like, you guys roll through the next two games, and I just wondered, when you win a game like that, do you even remember, kind of getting lucky a little bit?
Oh gosh, man, yeah, you remember it. Apparently, I'll sit here and I remember it. I remember we got lucky in the state tournament, in the state championship game a couple of times down the stretch too. But I guess that's just kind of part of it. That's part of pressure, and it's part of the game, and it's just that's why you play, man, right? It's those moments. People are going to make them, and people are going to not make them sometimes. That's just part of it. That's what makes the game fun. So, yeah, I'm glad. I'm not gonna lie. I'm glad I was on the winning end of that one.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw you play. It wasn't basketball. It was actually football. I was watching my younger brother Neil play football, and my dad calls me up, and I think I was living in Cedar Falls at the time. My dad calls me up. He says, you got to come down and watch this West Fork game. They got a quarterback that's like 6'6", skinny kid, but he's quite the athlete. And I remember watching that. I don't know if I've ever seen like a 1A quarterback that was like 6'6", 165 pounds or whatever. What were you doing playing football?
Yeah, so I love football. I'm not gonna lie to you. I love playing. I love competing. I love, my favorite sport was actually baseball. So like up until obviously high school, where it just took a little bit too much time. But I still am a big advocate of playing multiple sports, and I think you learn something valuable from each sport. For football, for me, I just love being the quarterback. I love controlling the game. I loved make plays. And there's something about football that no other sport has. And I honestly, I can't explain it to you. And I'm not a big football, I didn't play after high school. I didn't go to college, and I didn't go on the NFL or anything like that. But there's something about those Friday nights, man, in high school when you're running out there with your buddies, and it's starting to get dark, and then you're playing under the lights. Like, it's a special deal. And I would tell anybody that they need to play football. But there was a couple people that would ask me and ask my parents, like, what in the world is Seth playing that game for when he has these offers starting to come in? And, I'm not going to lie, we never sat down as a family and talked about it. It was just kind of part of who I was and what I enjoyed and what our family was about. And I had really close friends, and when you from a small school like that, like, you play all the sports with all of them. You know what I mean? So like my wide receivers were some of those same guys that played in the state tournament with me in basketball. So it's just kind of part of it. You just go from one sport to the next, and football was fun for me, so I stuck with it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there with like college coaches. Because you don't see a lot of big time basketball players, especially bigger guys, that are playing football. Every now and again, you'll see some guards that were also running backs or quarterbacks. We've seen that plenty of times, but you don't see the stretch four that's also playing football. So were these college basketball coaches that are recruiting you, was there any pressure to give up football or give up some of those other sports so you could focus on basketball more?
No, I wouldn't say that any of them told me to quit playing. I obviously, a couple of them would mention, like, make sure you're being careful and don't play defense. Like, they joke about it because I didn't play defense. I didn't play much defense. And then halfway through the year, I finally talked my coach into let me play a little defense, and that was fun for me too. I pretty much just played safety. I had a knack of understanding I just understood what was about to come, I guess, and I'd be able to help the guys out there. So that was kind of our defensive strategy. Not for me to actually make any tackles, I can promise you that. But no, they didn't say anything in terms of not playing. I had the only thing that happened was I was committed to UNI, and I got invited to the what is it, the Shrine Bowl or whatever the bowl is for seniors here in Iowa. Yeah. Shrine Bowl. I got invited to that, and I had already been on campus then for basketball here at UNI. So, like, they told me, like, well, I mean, they're not going to say no, but it would be kind of goofy for you to go do it now. Like, the Shrine Bowl is kind of for one last effort to, get your name out there and have a couple maybe smaller coaches see you and stuff like that. So they're like, I mean, you can do it, but we don't recommend you do it. Like, I just finished the lift with our basketball team here at UNI, and it just made sense. Like, why in the world would I go and play? So that was about the only time that it interfered with anything college related.
Now, speaking of, your college choice to attend UNI, obviously you're from like North Central, Northeast Iowa. But I've seen some stuff that like Iowa State was after you, Iowa talked to you, Wisconsin. And when I saw Wisconsin, I thought, you know what? Seth Tuttle looks like, one of those buzz cut Wisconsin guys. You could see that fitting in. So what was the final decision to go to UNI? Well,
I mean, a lot of it, at the end of the day, I didn't get an offer from Wisconsin, right? Okay. So that one, I never had to mull through that decision. You know what I mean? Like that was made by them by not offering me the scholarship. So obviously Wisconsin was taken off the board. But at the end of the day, we sat down with my parents. I sat down with my parents, and we did this pros and cons sheet. And we did it for every school that had contacted me, every school that had offered me, any school that hasn't yet, but I, for some reason, had interest in. And we went through that. And at the end of the day, like, we took we went to visits on 2 other places just to give it one last effort to see if it was going to happen or see if there's something that I missed that I really like about it. And when we came back home, it just was a no-brainer, man. It was UNI for me from the beginning. And I think I'm a relationships guy, right? Like, I'm a people person. So the way in which that the staff here, and lucky for me is I still get to work with them right now, the way that they treat people, the way that they go about their business, the way that they coach, the way that they are in the locker room and in between classes, and it's just fun. You know what I mean? Like, it's the closest thing to a straight up a family that you're going to find in college basketball or in college sports at all. Like, it's a very close knit group, and it made sense in my eyes why they were successful. It made sense in my eyes why they stuck around for so long. And why it works. And that was something that I was looking for when I was looking for schools, going through the school recruiting process, I guess.
Why is it that Jacobson seems to have so much success with guys that look like you? You've seen like the Cook brothers that go through and like Clint Carlson and Grant Stout before you, like these longer white guys from the Midwest that seem to like really fit into Coach Jake's system. Was that part of, that decision too? It's like, oh, I've seen that position be successful in his system.
Yeah, for sure. And he's great with, he always has been, he always will be. He's great with X's and O's. He's great with mismatches. He understands mismatches. And really all the guys that you mentioned, the reason that they're ones that pop in your head and that he's had success with is because they're mismatches no matter what you do on the court, right? Like Adam Cook, you could post him against smaller guys and you could take it off the balance from the 3-point line. You could pick and pop him so he could shoot if they had a big footer on him. Clint's the same way. Like, you could post him. He's really good off the bounce. He can pick and pop. Like, it puts the defense in so much difficult positions, you know what I mean? Like, if they want to hard hedge the ball screen, if they want to flat hedge, well, they're going to let the pop happen. If you go smaller to switch it, you're going to roll your mismatched player into the post, and now you're going against their point guard. It's the game of basketball, I guess. And he's just really good at taking that mismatch in particular and then making it work out for him better than most coaches, I guess is what I'd say. And that's why you see so much success. Wisconsin's very similar. You know,
right.
I mean, they have a lot of those same guys, and they do it really well. And they are constant mismatches, and they find the mismatch, and they do it every time down the floor, and it works. And it's hard to guard.
Who were the guys when you're in high school or even in your early college days that you were really trying to model your game after?
I can honestly tell you this is going to be a very strange thing. I didn't watch much basketball.
Really?
Yeah. I can actually tell you I didn't watch much sports in general, other than when the NCAA tournament came around, I'd watch. When the playoffs or football were on, I'd watch. I didn't really ever watch the NBA. I was an active kid, I guess is what I would say. Like, I'd rather go out and play in my front yard with my buddies than sit and watch the game on the TV at that age, at that point in time. Now it's a little bit different. I love watching the game now. Like, I'll watch a random North Florida versus, it doesn't matter, right? Like, I'll watch it. Like, I just like to watch the game. You can learn a lot about it. You can study the game now. And at that point in my life, going through high school, middle school, I had no interest in sitting down ever. I was just constantly going, doing something. And so I couldn't tell you if I really had anybody I modeled. I just played. I really just played the game, and I just tried to get better at every area of the game. That was something that my dad and I had talked quite a bit about, was just being able to be multidimensional, right? Like, don't only be good at one thing, be good at 6. And so we worked on that quite a bit.
Yeah, what's interesting is it didn't take you long once you got to UNI to kind of find your footing. You know, you played a lot right away as a freshman. And then by your junior year, you know, your first team All-Valley, your player of the year as a senior year. What was the moment at UNI where you thought, you know, I could be the best player in this conference? I can go from being just, you know, kind of just another guy, a rotation guy at UNI to being the best player in this league.
Yeah, well, there was one game specifically I'll tell you, and it was so my freshman year I was lucky enough to start. I didn't think I was going to start. I actually didn't think I was very good at all up until Coach Crawford took me in his office and told me I had to start being a lot more confident, because otherwise I'm not going to start. Like, I wasn't entirely sold on my abilities yet either. I partly because I just get absolutely manhandled in practice. Like, they just absolutely beat the crap out of me. I mean, I weighed like 205 pounds. I'm going against dudes who weighed 280. Like, it just wasn't. I can tell you, it wasn't much fun. That's for sure. It took a little bit of an adjustment, but so the season started. I was starting every game. And we get about halfway through one of the first conference games at home. We play Wichita State, and they got a big 7-footer, and I'm our starting center at 6'8", 205 pounds. They got a big 7-footer. So we took advantage of the mismatch, like we mentioned before, and we ran a play called 4 slice, where I catch the ball and I rip and I just drive it down the lane line. It's pretty much an ISO clear out for us. And I drove it right around Sturtz. Garrett Sturtz is the kid's name from Wichita State. I drove it right around him and I dunked it. And at that point, like, my confidence level skyrocketed for me individually, like, in my own head, in my own heart. Like, I knew, I was like, that was super easy. Let's do it again.
Right.
And and I just started doing it. And I just kept with it. And a lot of that comes from just having that experience, right? Like, feeling it for yourself. It's so hard to take someone's word until you actually feel it and see it for yourself. And that moment, literally that Wichita State game at home, when that happened for me, it really took off, and I was much more confident.
Was Wichita the biggest rival that you guys had during your era there?
Oh, well, I would say yes, partly because they were there all the way through. Creighton obviously was the biggest rival for the first couple of years. Yep. with the McDermott situation, with him committing here and then decommitting and going to Creighton.
Yeah.
All that stuff was going on. So it was obviously, I have no, obviously, ill feelings towards the situation, but every time he touched the ball in the McLeod Center, he'd get booed and stuff like that. So I would say, like, in terms of the biggest rival for our university at that point in time, it had to be Creighton.
Right.
And then obviously when Creighton left, we had 2 more years of Wichita State, and they obviously became the rivals, the big rivals, and they earned that title by how successful they were for those years, like getting a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament and going to the Final Four, and all that stuff happened for them. So
Yeah, that was Clee Anthony Early and Fred Van Vliet and Ron Baker. I mean, those guys were really, really good.
Yeah, and that was like when Fred and Ron were young. So like Clee Anthony Early was kind of he was the catalyst for that year. And when you can get young talent like Fred and Ron to come in and play, that's when your team can be really good. Like when you're led by seniors, but your young kids are really good. Like that's when you have a deep team and when you can really do something special.
What's the attitude like or the tenor like in the locker room when you might have the best team in the state, right? Like, what was it, your senior year? I think you guys started off 24-2. You guys are really, really good, but at the same time, you're still not getting the same amount of attention or fanfare as like in Iowa or Iowa State here in the state of Iowa.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. It kind of sucks, but it also doesn't suck. We obviously love all the publicity we can get, and we talk about it all the time about, if you want your gym to be full, then you win games, right? That's kind of how it works here at UNI. Like and it's kind of, we've turned it into a motivating factor in a roundabout way. And Jake will talk about it. Like we'll come out in the first 5-6 games of the year, it'll be like half full, and he'll talk about it after the game. We won the game, but he'll talk about it afterwards, and he'll be like, hey, if you want more people in here, let's go win the next game. Hey, you want the thing to be full, win the next 10. Right, and we use it as a motivating factor more than anything, more than sitting around and sulking about it, because obviously there's not much you can do about it. And now that I'm in the coaching role, like you hear quite a bit about like what we're trying to do to get more people into the seats and the strategic ways to get students to come to the games and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, like I'm still sold on what Jake sold us all on when we were playing. Like if you want people to come, win. Because we won, and we had sold-out games the last 10 games of the season.
Right.
And this year we said the same thing. We told our guys win, and we were like, 22-2 this year, and then coming down the stretch, every home game was sold out. Like if you want sellouts, win. And that's winning fixes a lot of those things that can really bother some people.
You know, it's funny. I look back at your highlights. It was just like 5 years ago, right? It wasn't that long ago. And yet the shorts that you guys were wearing back then, it seems like they were like 20 years ago. You know, isn't it amazing how quickly that changed? Like the shorts that you were wearing were like past your knees.
I wish you see, so we have every championship team we have at UNI, the picture of the team goes up on the, in the team room, right? And it's funny because in 15, our picture went up on the wall, obviously. And then in 16, they went up in the wall, and that was the year I was gone. And just from 15 to 16, the shorts that were on Wes Washington, they were probably 7 inches shorter. It's not a joke. Wes had his socks and his shorts touching each other as he's sitting in the picture in 15. And then in 16, he has like these, like the same size socks on, and his shorts are like halfway up his thigh. And I'm like, wow, that quickly changed. Like in 1 year, that changed like that. Funny you mentioned that, or you noticed that, because we were joking about it the other day. Actually, the last time we were in the locker room, we were joking about it. So,
well, it's funny because
it's funny.
That was a trend from like the early 2000s, right? I mean, that's kind of when we placed that. But as I'm watching your highlights, I'm realizing how big the shorts are, and that like it took so long for that trend to change, even though we remember it as like a kind of Allen Iverson era thing, even though it wasn't. It lasted a long time.
Yeah, it stuck around until about 2015, and that's the reason I'll say that I didn't go between my legs that much. It was just smart for me to keep the ball not getting all tangled up in my shorts.
Yeah, so, after UNI, you go and play overseas for a couple of years. Why did you only play for a couple of years overseas? I got to think that a guy like you could still be playing if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I made a decision which was it was the hardest decision I've ever made. And I just felt like at the time and where I was, the relationship point where I was with my now fiance and the opening here at UNI, it all kind of made sense that potentially I could take the next step, come home, start a family, get into coaching. I have a huge passion for coaching as well. So it wasn't like I was completely throwing the game away when I stopped playing. So all these things are, there's just I made the same pros and cons sheet. Apparently when I'm in trouble, I make a pro and con sheet, and I just decide after that. But it was a tough decision, man, and I just went with it and not looking back now.
Was there any thoughts to play in that like TBT tournament, the basketball tournament? I look at that roster the last couple of years of Iowa guys, the Peter Jocks of the world and the Tibby kid, and it's like, man, Seth Tuttle could be starting on this team.
Yeah, I mean, they've asked me every year, and I was going to do it this year, but then this pandemic stuff happened, and now the first week. Apparently the first week of games is on my wedding date, so it doesn't sound like it's going to happen. They've also asked me to come coach, but I just don't think it's going to happen. At least not this year. It is something I'm interested in. I still like basketball. I'm still very competitive. Ask our guys. They will tell you. I still got a little bit of juice left. So and that's kind of where it comes down to, like, I'd like to go out and show that I still got a little bit left in the tank, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen this year.
Do you dominate in practice?
Yes and no. I mean, to some extent, this year is a little bit different. We didn't have, I didn't get to play post at all this year. So I'd run around playing like the 1, 2, 3 in practice at times, just because we had so many. We went from having no big guys to now we have 18 what seems like big guys on our team. So I had to be a guard quite a bit this year, which was fun. But no, I mean, not to the point where I'm in there shooting every shot, what I do is I try to get every practice to the level of a game, the closest that we can. So like I know I've gotten to figure out some of our guys that I need to talk a little bit trash to get a fire going, and I know how to get some other guys riled up so that our practices are competitive, because that's, at the end of the day, like, that's the most important thing, is if you come every day and it's competitive, then you're getting better. And so that was really my role within practice.
Do you think AJ Green, by the time he's done, will he be the best Panther of all time?
Yes.
I mean, that guy's so good, right? Like, or he's see him every day in practice. I see him as just a fan, but it just seems like he's a little bit different than guys UNI's had in the past.
Yeah, I mean, he's very different. But, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I work out with him every day. I do everything I physically can with him, and he does more on top of it just by himself. I've never seen a kid work harder in my entire life. I'm not sure I ever will see anybody work harder than him in my entire life. And he has goals, and he's going to chase his goals to the fullest of his abilities, and I'm going to give him every ounce of energy I got. And in a lot of the ways, it's actually been really fun for me, because, like, being his guy, like, he'll come to me and he'll talk to me about stuff, and he'll ask me about stuff, and we watch film just one-on-one together. We do individual workouts just one-on-one together, and we're just constantly getting better together, right? Like, in different areas, he's getting better on his game, and even though I lace up, and I'm a bones versus cones guy, right? Like, I'd rather be in the workout versus put a cone up, because it's not realistic when there's a cone sitting there. So, like, when AJ does a finishing drill, he's doing a finishing drill through me. And stuff like that is important to me, and so it's fun for me to take part and get better in understanding how he's learning, what the best ways for him to learn are, and then also just I get better coaching, and I get better on the fly with every workout and every conversation that we have. So I appreciate his I'm going to call it a friendship quite a bit.
Talking about coaching, what have you learned from Coach Jake as a coach that you didn't know or didn't learn from him as a player?
Oh, just that there's more to everything than you even think, probably, is what I would say. And he's great at looking big picture. He's great at – most people would tell you he's kind of awkward, because you'll ask him a question, he'll sit there and he'll like to think about it before he answers for like 4 seconds. And I've always thought it was just because he's just a goofy guy, but now I understand he just analyzes everything, and he's such a good analyzer of everything that's going on that, like, I'll ask him something and he'll be ready for my question that I had in mind three questions down the road. Like, I'm setting up a question and he's already there. He already knows where we're going. Like, he's just very smart. He understands how things all impact other areas, and there's a reason why he's been successful, and it's just because he gets the big picture.
Well, Seth, the way we end every episode here of the Moonlight Graham Show, of course you know, is with the 5 big questions. And the first question is, who is your all-time favorite teammate?
Oh, boy. My all-time favorite teammate is, oh, man, I'm going to get cheesy on you here, but I'm going to say Desiree Deary. And you don't know who that is, but that's my fiance. She can hear me, so I'm saying it loud enough so she can hear it through the door.
You're a good man. You're a good man.
It also keeps me out of trouble because I know people listen to this, and I know that I got a lot of teammates, and I've played on a lot of different teams, and I'm pretty sure my buddy out in Ohio would even hear it if I didn't say his name. So I'm going Des because I know I can't get in trouble with that.
I like that. What's one memory that you have from your career, Seth, that reminds you of everything that you love about sports?
Winning the Valley tournament my senior year. The minute the game ended, I remember walking off, and I looked over to the right, across from our bench to all of our fans, and I held my right fist up, and there's, in a way, celebrating with all our fans. And even more than that is then when I turned back to the left, like our entire family section was right behind our bench, and I remember celebrating with them via obviously just screaming and yelling and looking at them and nodding that I appreciate them being there, and then going and giving Coach Jake a big hug and all the assistants big hugs and all of our players big hugs. I mean, that's just, you put so much into it. And that's what it's supposed to feel like. There's a reason you put so much into it. And if you didn't put so much into it, then most likely you're not going to win. So the more you put in, the more you get out. And that moment for me was everything that you work for, really.
Is there anything that still nags at you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, 2 of them that stick out for me is obviously losing to Louisville. Felt like we were actually a better team. They had a couple NBA players on that team. I've watched the game now, and it makes me sick when I watch because we should have, in my opinion, won that game. And our team was good enough to do more special things after that game. And then the other thing that nags at me is just playing and not playing. I mean, that'll nag at me, I think, for most likely the rest of my life, but it's something that I've lived with. But I get the other ways to burn off that little chip that I got. So I'm doing the best I can in those areas.
Who's the best player you've ever been on the court with?
Well, Anthony Davis. I played with him in AAU, and it was ridiculous what he was able to do. It was, I mean, I obviously was the one guarding him, so he scored the first couple baskets, and our AAU coach called a timeout, and I'm over there. I'm like, Jamie, I'm not sure what you want me to do. He goes, just keep doing what you're doing. So I started trying different strategies. Like I'd back off of him. He'd shoot this turnaround, this fadeaway, which is with his length, you couldn't do anything about it. With my inability to jump, he couldn't do anything about it. So I actually backed off him a couple of feet and got a running start to try to get to the fadeaway, and I didn't get it. Called another timeout. I'm over in the huddle, and I'm like, Jamie, what would you like me to do? He goes, I don't know, man. Just keep doing what you're doing. We're in the game still. So then I went to fouling him, and it still didn't matter. So it was he's and there's a reason he's one of the best in the world. And he is freaky good.
Seth, what is the best advice you've ever received?
I'm going to say 2 of them for you because, again, I can't pick one.
You're a politician.
One is, yeah, for sure. The first one is going to be relentless. My dad used that for me every day. It was kind of our slogan. He'd text me after a game, before a game, on a day off, and he'd always end it with relentless, be relentless at the end. And that was kind of my slogan that I tried to play by, and I really took with me when I was in Europe because I was by myself. And now I tried to transition that over into coaching and being relentless and getting our team ready and being ready and all that stuff. So that's a good one for me that I live by. And then the other one is the best advice that Coach Jake ever gave us was to be a good teammate. And I think that is so important because it's not about, like, these basketball seasons come and go, and the relationships that you have after them is way, way more important. I promise you. And I promise all those other players that might not think so quite yet, but it's going to stop at some point. And all the relationships that I have from UNI, from AAU, from my 3 teams over in Europe, like, they're super close. And I love it like that. And that's how it's supposed to be. And it's friendships that I'll have forever. So I would say be a good teammate and build relationships through it some of the best advice I'd ever gotten.
That's so good. So Seth, every week on the pod, sometimes we do this Moonlight Challenge, it's called. And the Moonlight Challenge, you know, one week it was the 40-yard dash. This week it's actually one of Kurt Warner's favorite workouts, which he picks 6 different spots around the three-point arc, and he's got to make 10 from each spot around the three-point arc and rebound his own. What's one workout that we can do when we air this that we can make the Moonlight Challenge that week? Brought to you by Seth Tuttle.
Oh, gosh, one workout?
One workout or shooting drill or conditioning drill, something that you and maybe you and AJ or whatever you do to stay sharp regularly.
Yeah, I mean, we do almost every day is some form of the Spurs 100. So it's pretty much what you're talking about with Warner's make 5 from all 5 or whatever, make 10 from all 5 or whatever. This would be like on the move. So you'd have to lift out of the corner like the ball screen's going away from you. You have to make 5. Then you have to fill the corner, make 5. Then you have to go to the other side. You have to lift out of the corner, make 5. Push to the corner, make 5. Like all these different moving into shots actions would be the workout that I appreciate the most, because it's so important to be able to shoot on the move and be able to catch the ball in motion and fire that thing with some accuracy. So,
and you got to make 100 of them then?
Yeah. So it's not actually 100. It's the Spurs 100. They do it in almost every NBA workout. You shoot 100. So yeah, sorry, I was saying make 5. So you shoot 5 and you keep tracking, and you go to the next spot and you'll shoot 5. You'll keep tracking. At the end, you'll see what your total is. I think the highest someone ever got in the workout, someone was telling me, was like 93.
Holy
I can't remember who it was, but yeah, someone. I'm pretty sure I got told that at Phoenix in my Phoenix workout, that their highest and that they're pretty sure anyone's ever got was 93.
Well, we'll throw it out there to our audience this week when we post the episode, and we'll see if anybody can beat 93. I highly doubt it, though.
Yeah. I'm assuming not, but you never know. You could get really hot at one point.
Nice.
Jeremy Morgan got 83, I think.
Oh yeah, he could shoot.
Yeah, he went and he got hot in a couple of workouts, and I think he went 80 and then 83 or something like that. He was telling me, so it was, which is really good. I mean, that's pretty good.
Nice. I really like that. Well, Seth, thanks for coming on the pod, man. It's been great getting caught up, and I really wish that 2011 state tournament game would have gone a little bit different, but it's all part of the story.
Yeah, I just want you to know that I went and the podcast was going on. I went and put my state championship ring on, so just to have a little bit of an edge. You know?
I like that. All right, cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, you bet, Seth. Hey, guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.